Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at what has to be one of history's absolute greatest underdog stories. Drawing from an incredibly detailed historical lecture by Dr. Kevin Frederick, we're going to explore a narrative that bridges the gap between medieval European persecution and modern American resilience. Seriously, this is a story packed with faith, tactical genius, and just the sheer, undeniable grit of a people known as the Waldensians.
Now, you might be looking at this famous quote by the American Southern writer William Faulkner and wondering, what does that have to do with an Alpine religious sect? Well, it actually serves as our thematic anchor today. Dr. Frederick uses this idea to establish a really deep philosophical connection between ancient suffering and modern identity. It's a great reminder that history isn't just a boring list of dates to memorize. It's the very DNA of who we are right now.
So, the big question we're answering today: how exactly did an ancient, fiercely persecuted mountain sect manage to transform, survive literal centuries of war, and eventually cross the ocean to build a thriving modern American town? Let's find out.
Our journey begins right here, grounded in Dr. Frederick's lecture. He points out something fascinating. This 850-year-long Waldensian history perfectly mirrors the writings of the Apostle Paul to the Thessalonians, a community that was told to endure persecution with steadfastness. Because for the Waldensians, persecution wasn't just some brief, dark chapter. It was a prominent everyday reality for over 8 centuries. And to understand how on earth they endured that, we have to look at the massive turning point where literally everything changed.
That brings us to Section 1, abandoning the ancient ways.
To really grasp what changed, you have to know who was leading them before 1532. The traditional Waldensian leaders were called the Barbus, which translates to uncles. For 350 years, these guys were itinerant, traveling pastors. They took strict vows of poverty and celibacy, they traveled in pairs, and they preached in total secrecy in the homes of believers just to avoid the Roman Catholic authorities. They were completely the heart and soul of the ancient Waldensian identity.
But then they basically discarded centuries of that unique tradition. They traded in those clandestine, underground home meetings, their strict, literal interpretation of Scripture, and their traveling barbuses for a brand new reformed alignment. They started worshiping in fixed physical buildings, adopted modern, complex scriptural interpretation, and began electing local ruling elders. They threw out their old ways to merge with the broader Protestant movement. In fact, it was such a massive shift that some historians actually argue this moment signaled the end of the original Waldensians.
So, you're probably thinking, did they abandon absolutely everything? Well, not quite. While they threw away almost all their pre-Reformation characteristics to align with Geneva, there was one specific, vital practice they fiercely protected. They absolutely insisted on translating, interpreting, and proclaiming the gospel in the language of the common people. That was a hard boundary for them, a totally non-negotiable trait that survived the merger.
But as you can probably guess, radically changing a 350-year-old culture just does not happen overnight. The older Barbus stubbornly resisted the vote from the Synod of Chanforan. It actually took decades for the Waldensian people to fully wrap their heads around this new Reformed theology. It wasn't until 1555, more than 20 years later, that the very first fixed Waldensian church building was finally erected in the village of Pralaguigu.
Moving on to Section 2, the Israel of the Alps.
While some scholars like to say the Waldensians ended in 1532, Dr. Frederick powerfully argues the exact opposite. He states that their unique identity was actually forged in the fires of relentless Catholic persecution, starting in the 1540s and lasting all the way into the 18th century. Across Europe, the Counter-Reformation concentrated its wrath heavily on these specific Alpine communities. They faced wave after terrifying wave of highly organized assaults from combined French and Savoyard troops.
So how on earth did they not get completely wiped off the map by the strongest armies in Europe? Well, it essentially came down to 3 specific factors. First, the extreme remoteness of their high-elevation Alpine homelands gave them a massive defensive advantage. Second, they developed highly effective homegrown guerrilla war tactics. And third, they possessed this incredibly deep, unshakable faith that God was present with them. They truly believed they were acting as a faithful remnant standing up to evil.
But of course, that kind of survival comes at a really heavy cost. Repeated royal edicts heavily restricted where they could go, leading to what historians call ghettoization. Forced into centuries of strict isolation and driven into clandestine worship out of sheer terror of being discovered and tortured, they naturally became deeply suspicious of outsiders.
However, the flip side of that is this intense pressure cooker environment formed them into an incredibly tightly knit, fiercely unified, and entirely self-sufficient community.
Which brings us to Section 3, Leadership in Dark Times.
Now, the Waldensians weren't entirely alone up there. The Swiss Reformed Church down in Geneva viewed them with immense respect. They actually saw the Waldensians as the true church that had maintained apostolic purity. Recognizing their strategic and spiritual importance, Geneva stepped up and threw them a lifeline. Over just a 30-year period, Geneva sent 60 highly trained pastors directly into the incredibly dangerous Cottony Alps to lead these isolated mountain churches. And out of this tradition of exceptionally strong pastoral leadership, figures of absolute legend started to emerge. Enter Pastor Henri Arnaud. During their absolute darkest days of exile into Geneva in 1686, Arnaud was the martial and spiritual glue holding the Waldensian people together. He basically had to transform from a traditional clergyman into a military general just to save his flock.
I want you to really picture these numbers. In 1689, Pastor Arnaud organizes a small but fiercely effective fighting force of just 900 exiled men. Their mission? To march all the way from Switzerland back to their homelands to reclaim them from the combined professional armies of France and the Savoy. That was a force of 20,000 troops. It is literally the ultimate David versus Goliath scenario. And against all logical odds, they prevailed. This wildly asymmetrical victory became known as the Glorious Return of 1689. But Arnaud's incredible leadership didn't stop at military victory. When the King of France forced 3,000 Waldensians into exile yet again 10 years later, Arnaud led his people to safety once more, helping them settle in the Darmstadt-Hesse region of Protestant Germany. Ministers exactly like him were the absolute core of their survival.
Yet it wasn't just guerrilla warfare and heroic fighting pastors. Underneath all the battles, it was their rigid organizational continuity that truly sustained them. Specifically, I'm talking about the annual Waldensian Synod meetings. This structural leadership actually dated all the way back to the Council of Bergamo in 1218. During the Counter-Reformation, they used these meetings to draw scriptural parallels between their own suffering and the exiled Hebrew people of the Old Testament. They boldly claimed the identity of the Israel of the Alps, drawing moral strength from the belief that they were God's covenant people.
And that perfectly sets up Section 4. The past is never dead.
We have traced an absolutely incredible timeline today, from their early medieval origins way back in 1218 to their radical identity shift in 1532, right through the miraculous military victory of 1689. But then, in 1893, the story takes a massive leap across the Atlantic Ocean.
On May 29, 1893, 10 Waldensian families stepped off a train in Valdez, North Carolina. They arrived with a deed for 10,000 acres of land and, honestly, an absolute mountain of debt. But they also arrived with 850 years of ancestral grit. Dr. Frederick notes that the exact same resolve, endurance, and fierce commitment to community that survived the Counter-Reformation allowed these early settlers to build a thriving town of industry. Over the next 40 years, they became a beacon of financial stability for thousands of citizens. They even successfully weathered the Great Depression.
Which brings our entire narrative bookend full circle. We are right back to Faulkner. The past is not even past. You see, the Waldensian story isn't just confined to some dusty textbook about 16th century Alpine wars. That ancient heritage of endurance directly fueled a modern American success story. Their history of intense persecution and survival literally became the engine of their future prosperity. So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. You've just seen how the Waldensians used the immense, crushing pressures of their past to forge an unbreakable community, one that spanned continents and centuries. As a focused learner applying these lessons, how will you let their fierce commitment to identity and perseverance inspire your own path? How can the crucible of the past shape the brilliant potential of your future? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep learning.